In the relatively long life that I have already been so fortunate to live, there have been many, many changes. There have been significant changes in religious affiliation, and there's been significant changes, as one would hope, in point of view, as my experience of life grew broader and deeper. But one of the most consistent themes in my life, and I can really date it almost from a moment when I was, excuse me, between 14 and 15. One of the most consistent things in my life has been my commitment to peacemaking. And just in the same way that Walter described it to you, with such typical Walter humor, that it takes a while for us to see how crucial it is that this gift we want to give the world and this quality that we want to see resonating in our world must also begin with a profound act of reconciliation within ourselves. A profound act of acceptance of who we are. And maybe further than that, an understanding of who we are, so that we can truly reconcile with ourselves, so that we can be somewhat less preoccupied with our woundedness and our capacity to wound, and far more generously engaged with the extraordinary revelation that we may indeed be spiritual beings, and that we may indeed have a vast repertoire of spiritual strengths to call on, and that if we could trust that, if we could even experiment a little bit with trusting that, then we really could begin to live in peace, inside and out. And I want to remind you because I know I myself have often needed reminding, that when we talk about peacemaking in this way, as the kind of central energy of our spiritual evolution, both individually and collectively, when we think about it, we're thinking about something that is tremendously active. There is absolutely nothing passive about peacemaking. It is a process of constantly choosing what matters and choosing how you will respond to it, choosing how you will see yourself and value yourself, and choosing how you will see and value other people. It is absolutely at the heart of everything. I was thinking this morning what a little revolution we could create if we truly said to one another when we met, even if we were meeting in the aisle at the local supermarket, "Peace be with you." And the other person said, "And also with you." This is a phrase and a call and response phrase that is very familiar to us. But do we take it seriously? Peace be with you, and also with you. I think that really represents the fact that we are giving one another a gift, but we must also be giving that gift to ourselves. And I was thinking also very, very deeply over the last week about how useful some of the teachings are from the Buddhist tradition about peacemaking. All of the religious traditions have something marvelous to tell us about peacemaking. And they have all given us the opportunity also to see how devastating it is when our peacemaking fails. We can be grateful to them for both. From the Buddhist tradition, we learn this. We learn, and this was one of the Buddha's first and perhaps most pivotal teachings after he was enlightened, after he came awake. And it's called the Four Noble Truths, and it will be familiar to some of you, and I'm just going to run through it in a way that I hope is not disrespectful, because I have to run a little bit. But the first noble truth is that there is suffering in life. Now, that's not a surprise to anybody here. The suffering is partly that there is a vulnerability to life, and also that we ourselves in this bodily life will suffer pain, loss, and death. That's the truth, that's the reality. The second of the noble truths, though, begins to be a little bit more interesting. That we can understand that there are causes of suffering beyond pain, loss, and death. That some of the suffering that we experience is quite unnecessary. Some of this suffering comes about through our own ignorance, not just of what we are doing, but even of who we are, and therefore who the other is. So this is the second of the noble truths. And really, this is a call to action. You know, it's saying, get on with it. Get to know who you are. Get to know what you're capable of being. Live a life of respect and joy and generosity. Have you got time to waste? No, actually, you haven't. Are you clinging to, are you cultivating the wrong things instead of the right things? Self-pity, anger, violence. Wherever those are present, suffering will also be present. And the third of the Four Noble Truths is that suffering can cease. It's partly, maybe more than partly, a choice. You can choose to be part of the healing of the world. You can choose to be part of the healing of your own self, or you can choose to be part of the suffering. It's a profound truth, and it's told in a different way in the Christian tradition, where it's talked about as free will, and where it's talked about as aligning your will with the will of God. And the fourth noble truth, and this is very delightfully Buddhist, is that there is an eightfold path that you can follow in order to free yourself from suffering. Very, very quickly, the eight on the eightfold paths are right understanding, meaning that you can get it, you can come awake, you can understand what life is and what really matters. Right thought, which goes way beyond positive thinking. Right speech, right action, right livelihood. What are you giving yourself to? Rather a good question. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now, in all of those, there are choices. And I just want to speak about a couple of them. I want to speak first of all about right view, because I think this is really what my last 30 years of writing and thinking and working and studying and constantly watching and listening have really been about. Establishing right view, which really means that I begin to understand something as fundamental as this, that I cannot harm you without harming myself. And I cannot heal myself without also benefiting you. That is, we are in this life together. We are given an incredible opportunity to lift one another up. And with the view that releases us from ignorance, we can begin to see this so poignantly in our large and small choices. So we can see, for example, if we're making a fuss about something that really does not matter, instead of saving our energy and working much more positively for the things that really do matter. Which of us has a day a week, a month, a year to waste on bitterness, on mistrust, on cultivated rage, on the falseness of self-pity? Which of us has time to waste? Central also in right view is beginning at least to acknowledge who you are. That you are not just your thoughts, that you are not just this body, that you are not just this identity of whatever your identity is, your profession, your suburb, your relationships, your being a grandmother or not being a grandmother, your having a partner, not having a partner. All of that matters. And yet, there is also something else with which you can identify, and that is at least the possibility that you are above all those things, beyond all those things. You are part of eternity. Last night when I was preparing this talk, I posted on Facebook Leonard Cohen's anthem. The birds they sang at break of day. Start again, I heard them say. Don't dwell on what has passed away or what is yet to be. Ah, the wars, they will be fought again. The holy dove, she will be caught again. Bought and sold and bought again. The dove is never free. But ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So one of the ways in which we also trap ourselves in ignorance is a kind of addiction to a false notion of perfection that can so spoil our peace of mind and our acceptance of one another. I love that song from Leonard Cohen so much because it actually invites us to be good-humoured about the life that we are cobbling together with our best intentions, and that we can also water it with far more hope and far more energy and far more faith and far more trust when we see that addiction to perfection simply as a distraction. Oh, here it comes. Oh, there it goes again. I also want to ask you to pay close attention to right speech, which includes right listening. We live in a world which again could be transformed if we actually learned to listen to one another. And speech, of course, is not just what people say. It's not just words. It's also attitude that is demonstrated so powerfully through your body, through your time, through the spaciousness with which you listen to this and the absolute refusal to listen to that. And I don't mean by that that you should expose yourself to listen to what is harmful. In fact, I would say the contrary. I think you should be listening very closely to what is uplifting and what is enriching, and reduce your availability to what is limiting and bitter and harmful. But I also think that in right speech is an invitation to listen to yourself, to listen to the messages that you are giving outwardly, and most of all, to listen to the messages that you are giving inwardly. This is a vital part of bringing peace to your heart, to your mind, and to the world. What are you telling yourself about your glorious possibilities? How are you cultivating your empathy, your appreciation, your joy in life? And that brings you, of course, to the third of the Eightfold Paths, and the last one that I'm going to bring to you today, which is right effort. And some of the wisest teachers that I have ever had the privilege to sit with both in person and in the marvels of sitting with them with a book open and allowing their words to come into my heart, is that our effort can be effortless. That the greatest effort we need to make is to be available. And after that, to surrender some of our preconceptions, and then to open ourselves to greater good humour as well as humour, and to some humility, that everything we have learned to this point has real value, and that there is still so much more to be learned. This is our freedom. This is our freedom to bring greater peace, greater happiness, not just to ourselves, but to everyone that we encounter. We can be quite obsessed with how other people affect us, and we can be very unwilling, reluctant, maybe even more than reluctant, refusing to see how our point of view, how our view in that Buddhist sense also affects other people. Again, through those gestures, through the words, through the interest that we are prepared to take, and the tolerance that we will have and that we are prepared to show others. Not to tolerate wrongdoing, but not either to exile that person from the human family by completely disparaging them, which can so often happen even in religious circles. We are free to choose to cultivate an attitude of peace. This is one of our greatest freedoms, and it will literally make the most significant difference, not just to our spiritual well-being, but also to our physical well-being, to our bodily health, to our blood pressure, to our state of mind, both physically and mentally. And in one of the most poignant and beautiful letters from Paul to the people of Galatia, he said this: "You are called to freedom, brothers and sisters." Not to servitude. The line is very clear. You are called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Don't use that freedom only to think about yourselves. For the sake of love, care for one another. And this is what guided me to write Seeking the Sacred, this very passage and all that it contains. The entire law of the Torah, the Hebrew teachings by which Christ himself lived, is summed up in a single rule: you shall love your neighbour as yourself. But actually, what we are free to do is not only to love our neighbour as ourselves, but to love ourselves in order that we can love our neighbour, and in order that we can see ourselves in our neighbour and our neighbour in ourselves. This is our freedom. And if any of you are sitting here today thinking, I'm not even in the kindergarten when it comes to making peace in my own mind, then you have the greatest advantage of all, because you fully realize what a challenge this is, and that in stepping up to the challenge, we discover what peace can teach us. The person who thinks that they already have a pretty good hold on it is the one who is most likely to be taken by surprise. The person who realizes that they are barely in the kindergarten, even approaching the kindergarten door, will perhaps spend some moments, not just every day, but a number of times through the day, returning to the temple of the heart and acknowledging that there is within them, that there is within you, that there is within me a place of perfect peace, and that if we give ourselves the opportunity, we can really begin, and begin again, and begin again and again and again to live from that place and to meet that place in one another. Peace is not just your gift to the world. Peace is your spiritual inheritance. It is the gift of the divine to you and to your heart. So I'm just going to finish with a few words from the Sufi poet Kabir. Don't go outside your house to see flowers. My friends, don't bother with that excursion. Inside your being, there are flowers, and each flower has 1,000 petals. That will do for a place to sit. Sitting there, you will have a glimpse of beauty inside the body and out of it, before gardens and after gardens, because inside love there is more joy than we can ever know. Rain pours down, although the sky is clear of clouds. There are whole rivers of light, and the universe is shot through with a single sort of love. Peace be with you and in our